You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. So, folks, we have a deep moral problem in this country. This country is certainly not heading in the right direction. And it's not just me saying that. That is the majority of Americans' feelings on this. Poll after poll has showed the consensus of this country, the majority of Americans, agree that this country is not heading in the right direction. And when I can read you an article where 5 pro-life activists were found guilty of the FACE Act violations in D.C. and could be facing 11 years in prison and are in prison right now because the judge ruled that they are a risk, flight risks, nonviolent protesters, activists, protesting an abortion clinic, a late-term abortion clinic, and they're sentenced to 11 years and they're sent to prison? They didn't commit no violence. Who's committing the violence? I would probably say the doctor that is performing late-term abortions on babies. We are facing a deep moral problem. This administration is the most radical administration we have ever seen. And in fact, I don't even know where this country is going to end up. It's almost like they want this place to explode. It's like they're poking us in the chest and just taunting us. This is by far the most politically partisan administration we've ever seen, by far. But it's not just that they're partisan, it's that they're radical. They do some of the most radical stuff, like they're coming after your guns. They're going after pro-life activists. They're persecuting and sentencing nonviolent protesters to 17 years in prison for walking into a Capitol building where the doors were open for them. Like, folks, what the hell is going on here? We got a serious problem. A serious problem. And does anybody notice that all these major sentences are all happening in our nation's capital, in the D.C. Circuit Courts? The second most powerful court in the land? I think what we're experiencing is an elite capture of our judiciary system in Washington, D.C. I mean, the founders fought a revolutionary war for a representative government. And that is not what the judiciary is constructed of right now in D.C. The D.C. court system, Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, has built its own phalanx of protection when every single government matter is fought in-house. So, of course, it's going to be corrupted over time. And that's exactly what we're watching now. All these cases that are being handed down, all these sentences, these radical, crazy sentences. Folks, a non-violent protester got sentenced to 17 years. And the 2 lawyers that firebombed a police cruiser and had more Molotov cocktails in their car, they're free walking around right now. The federal prosecution went up and said, yeah, we think a year's enough. A year's enough? 2 years is enough? And they're free? And they just sentenced this guy to 17 years for walking into the Capitol. And he's not the only one. I mean, they're handing down 30-year sentences for these people, for protesters, in some cases that weren't even there. Like the Proud Boys. I'm sorry, folks, every single one of these people need pardoned. That is exactly what's going to happen. And it's like these people are poking us in the chest. And they're trying to burn this thing down. They're trying to tear the whole damn thing down. It's like if we can't have it, nobody can. It's truly wild that nobody sees this. I talk to my fellow colleagues. I talk to people that are not in the politics. They do not see what's going on. How do we get these people to see what is going on before it's too late? How do we get people engaged and get people active? I don't know. This is the only thing I know to do, is to get behind this microphone and talk to people and talk about it. Talk about all the stuff that's happening. So the Washington, D.C., it's built like this massive super court to control itself. That is not at all what the founders had in mind. I think if the founders and the framers were here today and they seen what this government has turned into, they would be appalled. They're rolling in their graves. This is not at all what they had in mind for this country at all. I think we're watching. I don't want to be hyperbolic. I don't like to be this fear-mongering, this lunatic. I really don't. But the thing is I don't know what else to do when I see these things happening right in front of my eyes. We're watching our country being turned into a third world banana republic, a totalitarian regime. We're watching the rise, this Biden administration, which, listen, and we're going to be talking about it here in a little bit. Joe Biden is not running this country, ladies and gentlemen. He's not. There's no way this dementia-ridden old man is running this country. So we don't know who's running this country. But we have an idea who it may be. But we don't know for sure. This is not normal. They promised a vote for Joe Biden was a vote for normalcy. Nothing about this administration is normal. Nothing we've seen in the last 2.5 years has been normal. This is the third term of Barack Obama. So we're watching the collapse of our judicial system, where the government has captured the judiciary and it's being used either knowingly or unknowingly to persecute its political opponents. Like I said, we have nonviolent January 6 protesters being sentenced to 17, 30 years imprisonment. And it's not just the protesters and the activists, the pro-life activists, but it's the entire damn MAGA movement. We all got to be concerned. Even me behind this microphone have to be concerned. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. And at this rate, they could do anything and the people would support it. Nobody would be paying attention. They could come into my house right now, drag me out of my house, make up some bullcrap law, arrest me for something, whatever it is, domestic terrorism, call me a MAGA Trump-supporting domestic terrorist, and then take me to Washington, D.C., and then I would probably be sentenced to 30 years in prison. I mean, it's that easy. This is the kind of stuff we're watching happen. When you can have pro-life activists, non-violent, being sentenced to 11 years in prison, this is insane. And these judges, it's all these judges. Like I said, this is an elite capture of our judiciary system in Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital has no doubt turned into a swamp that protects itself, has its own phalanx of judges, and it's turned into an ideology. All these judges are becoming ideologues, and they're not handing down sentences. They're not doing justice. They're activists, and they're taking activist roles as judges. They're not pursuing justice. This is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous, man. Extremely dangerous. So when a country faces a situation where there's a collapse in a judicial system and the government is captured by the judiciary and persecuting its political opponents, folks, that signifies a severe breakdown in the rule of law and democratic governance. That is exactly what we're watching. And so we're going to start seeing the erosion of democracy. We're seeing that right now. So a situation where the judiciary has been taken over by a rogue government is a significant threat to the democracy because it undermines the principles of separation of powers and the checks and balances that are essential for a functioning democracy. That is what's happening. We have separations of power, right? But what's really happening in the background is these powers are combining forces and creating a fourth branch of government where they have their own court system, they have their own Congress, they have their Senate, House, they have their own an executive branch, they have their own military, they have their own homeland security, where you can have open borders, you can have a corrupt president that's persecuting his political opponents, and you have a judiciary that's handing down all these sentencings like a bunch of activists. And so that is absolutely destroying our democracy. It's destroying our constitutional republic. If this is allowed to go on, who is going to step in and say enough is enough? I'm sorry, folks, but I see something bad coming on the horizon. I'm telling you, I see something. I see the whole damn thing collapsing. And maybe that's their goal. I don't know. Maybe they want it to collapse so they can build their own utopia. But what's bothering me is nobody else is seeing it. Like only us conservatives that see it. And the left sees it, but they cheer for it. They like it. So it's clear we are watching the violation of human rights right now, right in front of us. I mean, Donald Trump's irrelevant. I mean, granted, yeah, they're violating almost every single right in the book. His due process, his right to an attorney, his right to free speech. I mean, think about it. This is why people are saying if they can do it to Donald Trump, they're going to do it to all of us. Because Donald Trump is going to be the precedent. And so if they can do it to a former president, a current running nominee for the Republican Party for presidency, they could do it to anybody. So they're literally violating people's rights. I mean, because the persecution of political opponents can lead to gross human rights violations, wrongful arrests, detentions, and even violence. There's no doubt we're watching wrongful arrests right now. And so I just don't know what the response is. I really don't. You know, a lot of us conservatives step outside of our echo chamber. The left does not. They have no clue what's going on. Most of them don't. That the ones that do, they support it because it furthers their agenda. It gives them their desired outcome. What happens when there is no separation in power? What happens when there is no checks and balance? I mean, I don't know. But it's clear that these judges in Washington, D.C. have lost their damn mind and have become activists. These are all Obama, Biden appointees. And even the Trump appointees they're going off the wall. They're losing their damn minds. This is not justice. You do not hand somebody that walks inside the Capitol when there's an open door, you do not sentence them to 17 years in prison. You have people that weren't even there, these oath keepers. I have no idea what they do. But they didn't kill anybody. They didn't commit any kinds of violence against anybody. And they're getting 33 years in prison. Essentially, that's the rest of their life. I mean, so what happens in the end when all these sentences, all these persecutions were wrong? Because they are wrong. They're morally and ethically wrong. I don't care what these judges say. I don't know what's happening to our justice system. I don't, but I know it's being destroyed. Our entire rule of law is being destroyed. They're using civil war laws against people. They're wrapping and they're bending and twisting laws like we've never even seen before. Unprecedented things we have never seen before. All in the name to persecute the MAGA movement. Well, that's going to be a problem, folks, because I'm sorry, but there's like 80 million people that voted for Donald Trump. So, I mean, that's going to be a big issue, especially when you see Donald Trump rising in the polls. That means you have more people willing to vote for him. So what is this fourth branch of government going to do? Just arrest everybody and lock everybody away? No, what they're doing is they're sending a message to people. You protest an abortion clinic, you will be sentenced to 11 years in prison. If you protest and petition your government, you will be sentenced to 33 years. They are sending a message. No protesting, no free speech. And then with these gun laws that just came out, no guns. I mean, it's just incredible, man. Nonviolent January 6 protesters being sentenced to 17 years in prison. The entire damn MAGA movement is being persecuted. And then you have these people like Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, being subjected to persecution. What the hell did he do? Challenge the Democrats' election? Challenge the Biden election? We all know that damn election was fraudulent. That election was not a legit election, folks. I don't care what anybody says. The level of shenanigans we've seen and we're continuing to see come out of that election is breathtaking. So what are they going to do? Arrest anybody that challenges Joe Biden's election? Because that's certainly what it looks like. So Georgia election officials are suing Giuliani for defamation for causing disruptions in their life. So who's suing Biden for his defamation? You guys remember Joe Biden accused a truck driver of drinking and driving and killing his wife and kid in the car accident. He accused that guy for years. That guy passed away blaming himself because Joe Biden was blaming him everywhere he went. You know how he does his stupid speeches and he lies every time he says a story. He's been using the death of his wife and child in that car accident as a way to prop himself up in politics. The guy is sick. He's disgusting. And meanwhile, this truck driver who wasn't drinking, and it wasn't his fault, had to live his whole life with Joe Biden telling everybody it was. I mean, how is that not defamation? That is like the definition of defamation. If anybody should be sued for defamation, it's Joe Biden. Well, the truck driver's dead now, but his daughter is around. But how can the daughter sue? Because her dad's not around. But this is what we're dealing with, man. We're dealing with a two-tier justice system where only one side is being persecuted. Only one side is being held accountable. And not just being held accountable, but they're starting to make stuff up now. I mean, they're over-prosecuting, they're overcharging, they're bending and twisting laws to get a desired outcome. They're using laws that are 150 years old, and they're changing the meanings of stuff. Nobody's innocent anymore until proven guilty. Everybody's guilty and has to prove their innocence in a federal court system that is in the swamp, that votes 95% Democrat. Folks, as a Republican, you don't have a chance in Washington, D.C. Everybody there's a Democrat that hates Republicans right now. Any Republican that goes in front of a D.C. judge gets railroaded, gets 17 years, 30 years in prison. But if you firebomb a police cruiser and you support the George Floyd riot, then that's perfectly fine. You get 2 years and that's it, and then you're done. That's what those two attorneys did. They firebombed the police cruiser and they're not in prison right now. They served their time. Time served. They did a year, year and a half or something like that. They're done. Meanwhile, you have activists, you have protesters being sentenced to 17 years in prison. This is crazy, man. This is insane. So I wanted to start the show off with, I'm outraged with the stuff that I'm seeing with this Biggs guy getting 17 years in prison. Outraged. I'm pissed off with everything that I'm seeing, and I've been seeing it for months. But I think I'm more pissed off that people aren't noticing it. Because it's like, how can we have the rise of this totalitarian regime and nobody notice it? It's like the slow boil. It's going to be just like COVID, where nobody's going to be paying attention until they're knocking on your door, telling you to take a shot or you can't work. Man. Meanwhile, what is Joe Biden doing? What is this guy doing, man? So I want to know, if we're going to be talking about real accountability, let's talk about accountability. How about this? I got an article here from Just the News. The House Foreign Affairs Committee has scored a long-awaited interview in its investigation into whether a military sniper was denied permission 2 years ago to shoot the terrorist who detonated a bomb at the Kabul airport, killing 13 U.S. troops and 170 others in a tragic end to the bungled U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. That was Joe Biden. That was the guy they're trying to convince people to vote for again. Again, I think the withdrawal from Afghanistan is one of the most atrocious things that Biden is responsible for. Forget the southern border, that's bad. All the carnage that's happening down there because of Joe Biden's border policies. But this by far outweighs all of that. This guy, the entire damn thing, he hasn't mentioned these soldiers' names once. Do you guys ever hear Joe Biden talking about the 13 soldiers that died in Kabul airport from his disastrous withdrawal? His withdrawal. Not Trump's, not Milley's, Joe Biden's withdrawal. He was told it is not a good idea to withdraw this way. And what did he do? He did it anyways. He overrid his intelligence, the people surrounding him telling him what to do, and he denied them, and he did it anyways. And 13 kids got killed. So there's going to be questioning now. And there should be. Because I'll tell you what, if there was a sniper that had his crosshairs on this bomber and he was told not to take him out, then we got some serious issues, folks. To me, that should be persecuted. To me, there should be accountability for that. Who's getting indicted for that? Who's getting 17 years for that? So you're telling me a military sniper could have prevented the deaths of 13 people, but was denied to take the shot? Man. So lawmakers will question the commanding officer at the time, Marine Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whitted, on September 11th, the 22nd anniversary of America's most deadly terrorist attack. Representative Michael McCall, chairman of the committee, told Just the News on Tuesday. He made the comments after the committee met with Gold Star families of the service members killed in the 2021 attack. The Abbey Gate terrorist attack at the Hamad Karzai International Airport in Kabul has become a powerful symbol of the Biden administration's failures in withdrawing troops chaotically from Afghanistan, allowing the Taliban to return to power after a 2-decade war in the country. Senator Jim Risch, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, earlier called the withdrawal from Afghanistan disastrously unplanned. Quote, "The Marine Corps finally got back to us after I talked to General Milley," McCall told Just the News. "I said, I don't understand why you're not making this man available." And he talked to Secretary Austin, and now he will be made available to the committee for an interview, and it's scheduled, I believe, September 11th. Ironically, 9/11. And I'll be back in town for that, and I'm going to personally attend. Just the News has learned that McCall invited all committee members to the meeting, but only one Democrat, Pennsylvania Representative Madeleine Dean, and 10 Republicans participated. The committee's top Democrat, Representative Gregory Meeks of New York, was not in attendance. His spokesperson did not return a request for comment before publication. Why? These people are disgusting, man. The Democrat Party must be defeated in 2024. I know the Republicans are bad. I know they are. Trust me. If anyone is going to admit that, I will admit it. I was reluctant to join the Republican Party, but I had to, so that I can vote in primaries. I am a conservative. I am an originalist, constitutionalist conservative. That is what I am. I look at the Constitution in the way that the founders intended it to be. I look at this country in the way that the founders intended it to be. And when I come up to a situation that has a gray area, I always ask myself, what would the founders do? That is who I am. That's what I do. I don't try and progress into the moment. I don't say that the Constitution is old and outdated. I don't try and twist laws into pretzels and bend and stretch the laws to get a desired outcome. I say, what would the founders have done? And folks, I'm sorry, but the founders fought a Revolutionary War to fight against tyranny and to give Americans a representative government. And that is exactly what we don't have right now. The Americans don't have a representative government. We have representatives, but it's not a government. This is not a government. This is a regime. This is a bunch of people doing what they want to do when they want to do it. And they're getting rich doing it. We have an executive branch that's non-existent. In fact, we don't even know who's running our country because it's not Joe Biden. There's no way this guy is making any kind of decisions. The only decision I think he made was the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And from then on, somebody took the reins. This is a complete disaster. This country is a disaster. These people's ideas suck. Their whole goal for this country is to create this welfare state, this giant police welfare state. That is what they want. They have our borders wide open. And when I say wide open, I mean they welded the doors open to our southern border. That is not a joke. We did a show on it the other day. Welded their doors open. Who benefits from that? So I want to get back to this Afghanistan withdrawal. So Representative Corey Mills, a member of the committee and a war veteran who served in Iraq, told Just the News after the meeting that he thinks the order to stand down on that day goes even higher than Whitehead. I think it's definitely higher than the commanding officer, which is why I've submitted my articles of impeachment on the Secretary of Defense. And I think that it goes one step higher when it comes ultimately to a person. When you call yourself the commander-in-chief and you're ultimately responsible for the safety of your American armed forces that you deploy abroad, Mills said, the buck stops at you. And yet Joe Biden doesn't take any responsibility for the Afghanistan withdrawal. The guy checked his watch when they were rolling the coffins off the plane. Not once, not twice, but every single coffin. He checked his watch like he had something better to do. And you want to hear some audio from one of the soldiers that survived the explosion? Here, listen to this.
Oh my God, who's the president? And just so much had happened, just had so much trauma on me. I had no idea who the president was. I didn't think it was Trump. I didn't think it was Biden. My brain couldn't make the connection. I had no idea who the president was. And I'm like, holy like this dude's going to be in here any minute. I have no idea who the president is. And, I look over at my mom, like, mom. She's like, what? Like, what's up, sweetheart? And I'm like, who's the president? And she's like laughing. And she's like, what? I'm like, who is the president? And she's like, are you serious? I'm like, I have no idea who the president is. And she's like, sweetheart, it's Joe Biden. And this is just me talking about what happened. But I just leaned back and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God. And that's what I said. And the Secret Service dude just like beat red, like trying not to laugh. And I was like, and this dude, like 2 minutes later, he walks in with him and Jill Biden and their little entourage of people and like a photographer. And right away, like remember him coming up to me, trying to shake my hand, like try to shake my right hand. And I look at him and I'm like, I don't have an arm. And my left arm is in this big cast with this giant orange foam block around it. I completely immobile. All I can do is move my head. My arm's gone. I'm like, I don't have an arm. And he says, oh, and like kind of stands up and then like goes over to reach for my fingers because about an inch of my fingers are showing, and just like grabs my fingers. Doesn't greet me or anything. Just that's what happened. Just grab my fingers. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And, you know, almost immediately starts talking like about how their son served in the military. Doesn't say anything about what happened. Starts talking about how their son served in the military. And my mom is just like, she's furious at this point. And they're like taking pictures and stuff. And she was like, my mom said that, she was like, I don't give a I don't care what you guys do. She's like, you better take care of him for the rest of his life. And like she said that. And I'm sitting there and he comes over to me and he leans over me. And I have a picture of this to prove it. I'll show you this picture that I have. It's a pretty funny picture. He leans over me and he's like this close to my face and he's like, what do you want? And I said,
what do you want?
Yeah, he said, what do you want? And I said, what? He said, what do you want? And I'm just like confused. I just got blown up. I just fucking saw my friends die next to me. I'm like, I just want to be myself. And he's like, huh? And my mom's furious. And she's like, he said he just wants to be himself. He just wants to be him. He said he just wants to be me. And he goes, oh, okay. And they just continue to talk about everything but what just happened. And then they just ushered him out of the room. He didn't know what to say. They ushered him out of the room, and that was that. And my mom tried multiple times to get help from them, reaching out to the First Lady and try to get some legislation passed for caretakers like herself who own businesses who don't get any financial support for helping their fucking service member that just got his whole life torn apart. And she wanted to help other caretakers in the future have, because there's certain amount of money that you can get as a caretaker depending on what you do and or help, but it's a process. And so she was working through that, but she wanted to pass legislation for future caretakers to help get, like, hey, if you run a business and you need to come take care of your son who served their country and just got blown up, like, you can do that and not have to worry about financial for a little bit, you know what I mean? And so she was trying to get help with that, and they just pretended to help. They kind of just brushed her off and pretended like they were connecting her with the right individuals and didn't help her at all. And so, obviously, because of the Congress stuff now, my mom is since, going to be moving forward with some stuff with some individuals who are actually going to help.
This isn't new, folks. This is who Joe Biden is. This isn't new. Everything is about Joe Biden. Joe Biden he is nothing and everything at the same time. He has no principles. He values nothing but himself and money. I'm sorry, folks. This guy is not a good guy. And if we find out that he was responsible for this bombing because he didn't give the order to kill that terrorist, that suicide bomber, we got issues, man. So Representative Darrell Issa, also a member of the committee, was asked if he is surprised that the person who made the call not to shoot the terrorist before the attack is still unknown to the committee and the public, even after 2 years since the attack that might have been thwarted. Quote, I'm not surprised that there has been denial followed by delay by this administration. I think the question is, how much longer will it be tolerated? And the answer from the speaker has not been very much. Issa, who served as a captain in the U.S. Army, added, we're going to find out who this was. And look, I get why nobody wants to take the blame for this. But folks, the sniper had the bomber in his crosshairs. So Sergeant Taylor Vargas Andrews initially testified before the House committee in March that he had the suicide bomber in his sights before the bombing, but was ordered to stand down. Quote, we communicated the atrocities to our chain of command and intel assets, but nothing came of it. Vargas Andrews said Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead was Vargas Andrews' commanding officer at the time of the attack. Vargas Andrews attended the meeting on Tuesday with lawmakers and the Gold Star families, but he declined interviews on site. McCall wrote a letter to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin on August 15th requesting that he make Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead available for questioning based on Vargas Andrews' account of what transpired before the deadly attack in Afghanistan. In the early morning on the day of the attack, intelligence was provided to Sergeant Vargas Andrews and his team, a description of the bomber, identifying him and noting his presence in the area. Read the letter. This implies components of the military and others had more than 12 hours of advanced warning. Additionally, the military's reliance on the Taliban to provide security at the airport created an environment rife with opportunities for security breakdowns. The whole damn thing was a disaster. And yet Joe Biden won't even mention these soldiers' names. He wants to forget everything that happened because it makes him look bad. This guy cares nothing about his optics. He cares nothing about what other people think of him. The guy doesn't care about anything. This is why he can go to Maui and make stupid-ass speeches about a dog and make stupid-ass speeches about a kitchen fire. Because the guy does not care about anything but himself. That is it. He doesn't even care about his own family. Folks, he knew his son had a drug problem, and he still allowed his son to fly around with him to every single country and make multi-million-dollar deals. And he knew his son had a drug problem. Which father condones that type of behavior? A bad one. That's what kind of father condones that type of behavior. So he's not even a good father. He's not a good person. And we're supposed to sit here and allow this atrocity to unfold in our country as this guy is sitting on a beach somewhere in Delaware. We don't even know who's running our country, most likely Obama. I mean, what the hell, man? So if we find out that Joe Biden is responsible for this, what a freaking disaster. This should lead to his impeachment alone. You know what? No, it shouldn't lead to his impeachment. I take that back. This right here should cost Joe Biden the election, period. People should not vote for somebody like Joe Biden. The guy is awful. He is not a good man. Joe Biden is everything they said Donald Trump was. Donald Trump was trying to help this country, the American people, my fellow conservatives and Republicans, and people that love this country and love the people in it, are trying to rid this country of the corruption, and they are getting imprisoned. These people are trying to make this country better. But this fourth branch of government, this elite system that has elite capture over our judiciary system, is kicking them in the teeth, is locking them up. protesters, activists. Imagine if Donald Trump's Justice Department would have sentenced BLM protesters to 30 years in prison. What happened on January 6th was not an insurrection. It doesn't even hold a candle to the riots of 2020, where we watched cities burn, courthouses burn, police precincts burn, 2 lawyers throw a firebomb in a cop car, burned it to a crisp, had more in their trunk, and they get 2 years. They're done and out. They're done with it already. We watched an FBI agent forge a document, fabricate a government document in order to get an illegal FISA warrant on an American citizen, to spy on an American citizen. He gets 1 year probation, still gets to practice law, doesn't even take his law license. We're watching the injustices right in front of our face. What do they expect the American people to do? The American people are trying everything they can. And then the one thing that they do have, their elections, they're being rigged. The Democrats are getting ready to spend billions and billions of dollars with these operations we talked about in yesterday's episode, with these like GBI strategies, where they just send canvassers out to just get as many voter registrations as they can. And if they can't get enough, they'll just make them and sign them themselves with fake addresses and fake names and fake residencies. Like, it's insane what we're watching. Folks, I'm telling you right now, if they manage to destroy our election system, it is over, because that is the only thing that the founders gave us. That is our ripcord. That is a break glass in case of emergency thing. Our vote. If we don't have our vote, we don't have a representative government. If we don't have a representative government, then what do we have? A tyranny. The one thing the founding fathers fought a revolutionary war for. And we're going right back to that place. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. It's cyclical. History just repeats itself over and over and over and over again. And I'm telling you, I see what is happening. And people need to wake up, but I don't know what else to do. You know, I'm going to go knocking on doors this election. I'm going to go do what I need to do. I'll make the show, I'll sit behind this mic, I'll tell people, I'll talk to people, I'll communicate, collaborate, whatever I got to do. But we need a ton of me. We need every single American doing what I'm doing. We need Americans to be active. We need Americans to see what is going on. But what we're watching right now is chaos, and nobody's paying attention. I had a buddy tell me today, he's like, I noticed they arrested Donald Trump again. Like, and it's just so crazy how it's happening in just a passing conversation. Like it's like a normal thing. They have normalized the abnormal. They have moved the Overton window way, way to the left. And we're supposed to just accept it. And then right at the top of all of this is Joe Biden. They promised a vote for Joe Biden was normalcy, and they gave us abnormalcy. They gave us a disaster. But look, 77% of Americans say that Joe Biden is too old for this. But yet they're going to run him anyways. It's almost like they already know what the outcome's going to be. They're going to stick with Joe Biden because they think they're going to probably just cheat anyways. So why not Joe Biden? Joe Biden's going to win. He's going to get submitted to a hospital. He's going to have to resign because he's got dementia. And we're going to get stuck with Kamala Harris. Maybe that's what they want. But the American people don't like Kamala Harris because she got less than 1% in her debates in their primaries. So again, this government, this fourth branch of government is going to give the country, is going to give the American people a president, a commander-in-chief they did not elect and they do not want. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like any kind of country or representative government I want to live in. And it's certainly not what the founding fathers had in mind. So we're going to find out about this. Let's see if this lieutenant colonel comes in and see exactly who is responsible for not making the call to that sniper to take out that bomber. For 12 hours, they had him in his sights. For 12 hours, all these lives could have been saved. But somebody messed up big time. No accountability for that? Where's that guy's 17 years? Where's that guy's 30 years? I don't say. It's like we're in opposite world. It's like the heroes are the villains and the villains are the heroes. The people trying to help this country and rid it of corruption are being imprisoned, and the people who should be imprisoned are running the country. It's mind-blowing. Our politics, our government has become corrupt beyond all recognition. We can't even fathom how corrupt this swamp is. You're not even allowed to protest or petition your government anymore. They will arrest you and throw you in prison. This is exactly what's happening to Donald Trump and 19 other people around him and 16 people in Michigan, Republicans, senior citizens that have the average age of 70. There's an 81-year-old man that is going to get sentenced for the rest of his life in prison because he was an alternate elector for Donald Trump while the challenges were in court. Folks, that is sending a message. That is not justice. That is sending a message. We have a rogue Department of Justice with rogue prosecutors and rogue district attorneys. That is exactly what we have. And rogue judges. We have activist judges. These are not judges anymore. These are activists in a black robe. Mark Levin calls them activists in black robes. That is what they are. That is what we're watching. And we're watching them destroy our rule of law, destroy our country, destroy our democracy, destroy our constitutional republic. That is exactly what they're doing. And we're supposed to just sit by and watch it happen? I don't think so. What do these people think is going to happen in 2024 if they arrest Donald Trump, throw him in prison, and then get Joe Biden elected? Exactly. It's going to be an explosion of chaos and maybe even civil war. And it makes you wonder. The only thing I can think of is that they want a civil war. Because you wouldn't be doing this stuff if you did not want that, because you know that is what's going to be the outcome. It's clear we have division. It's clear this country's not unified, but they're not doing anything to unify it. All they're doing is persecuting their political opponents. They're applying the law unequally. Justice is not blind anymore. They're persecuting their political opponents, persecuting protesters and activists, throwing them in prison, imprisoning activists, imprisoning protesters, but only the protesters that aren't part of their cause. Their protesters, BLM and Antifa, they're perfectly fine. We don't hear about any of them getting 17 years. Folks, there was people that got murdered during the BLM riots, during the George Floyd riots. Murdered. Courthouses burned. Police precincts burned. There was a Chaz. There was an entire, 3 blocks that was overtaken by Antifa. The autonomous zone. Who got sent to prison for that? Exactly. So, on top of all the other disasters that Joe Biden has created, including the southern border, where I told you they welded open the southern border, the doors to the southern border, the gates. They welded open the gates. There's these, where the border wall is, okay? Where the border wall is, they have these gates. The wall opens up. There's a gate. There's a door cut into the gate, and it opens up. It opens and closes, and there's a lock. Well, they opened it up and then welded the hinges so that it can't be closed. What is the purpose of that? The only thing I can think of is they're trying to change the voting demographic in this country. They're trying to turn Texas blue, is what they're doing. That is the only benefit I can see. They're trying to get these people to vote. They're trying to get them work permits. They're trying to figure out ways to get them to vote. It is going to be the largest amnesty project in United States history. So Joe Biden, the Biden administration, flows this country with 20 million illegal immigrants and then makes them all citizens. How is that even possible? You might say, oh, well, they can't vote. Folks, why not? If they got work permits, they got IDs, they got driver's license, why can't they vote? What's to stop them from voting? It's certainly not going to be any of these blue states where Democrats seem to think that anybody that lives here should have a say-so in our elections. They don't say count all legal votes. They say count all votes, whether you're legal or not. This is what I'm talking about. The mindset, this is what they're going to do. They're going to use illegal immigrants as voting. They're going to go door to door. This is why they gave them cell phones. They say, hey, fill out this app that allows us to track you. And so come election time, they're going to be knocking on them doors and they're going to be tracking them down with ballots to fill out. Well, so I got an article here from Daily Signal. Busing illegal immigrants to Blue America is working. Democrats deserve blame for Biden's border crisis. So Republican border state strategy to send illegal immigrants to Democrat-run cities and states is paying off. On Thursday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul sent a letter to President Joe Biden begging for federal aid. Importantly, she finally acknowledged where the problem is coming from. Quote, "This is a financial burden the city and state are shouldering on behalf of the federal government," Hochul, a fellow Democrat, said of the illegal immigrants pouring into New York. "I cannot ask New Yorkers to pay for what is fundamentally a federal responsibility," the governor wrote, "and I urge the federal government to take prompt and significant action today to meet its obligation to New York State." In a press conference following the release of a letter, Hochul further complained about illegal immigrants released into the country by the Biden administration. And here she is right here. Check this out.
The reality is we've managed thus far without substantive support from Washington. And despite the fact that this is a national, indeed an inherently federal issue. But New York has shouldered this burden for far too long. Since the first migrants began arriving at the Port Authority bus terminal last year, city and state have poured tremendous funds, billions of dollars, and energy into helping them. The city has been helping by the state to manage this in partnership with our state legislature. And in our budget, we allocated over $1 billion, now upwards of $1.5 billion, for providing shelter, National Guard, public health, transit, case management, and legal services to asylum seekers, especially the housing. That's in addition to the over 200 shelters and hotels that are stood up by the city of New York with the financial support from the state. But now, many of you are starting to see open space turn into enormous temporary shelters, buses arriving at hotels in several upstate counties.
Oh, well, what happened to all are welcome? No exceptions. Huh. This is an interesting pivot from the New York governor. Until now, Democrat politicians mostly have been unwilling to criticize the White House in any way on the border security issues, or even suggest that the Biden administration is where the problem originates. If you want to know the reason for the sudden pivot, a new poll sheds light. The Siena College poll released Tuesday shows that New Yorkers are deeply discontented about the surge of illegal immigrants in their state and mostly blame Democrat leaders. Good. The blame is exactly where it needs to be. New Yorkers, including huge majorities of Democrats, Republicans, Independents, upstaters, and downstaters, overwhelmingly say that the recent influx of migrants to New York is a serious problem for the state, Siena College pollster Stephen Greenberg said. Now, this may seem meaningless in the sense that New York is unlikely to become a red state anytime soon, but keep in mind that the crime issue didn't just swing seats from Democrat to Republican in 2022 midterm elections. It likely also gave the GOP overall control of the U.S. House of Representatives. Discontent over lawless Democrat policies is much worse now, and the New York voters are heaping the blame on Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and most of all, Joe Biden. Open borders and the idea that all immigration, whether legal or illegal, is a positive good is a matter of faith for Democrat Party activists. That's less likely to be true with rank-and-file voters and independents. There is no question in my mind that the politics of this is a disaster to Democrats, said Howard Wolfson, a former deputy and political advisor to former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, in an interview with the New York Times. Quote, "The issue alone has the potential to cost Democrats the House because it is such a huge issue in New York City and the coverage of it is clearly heard and seen by voters in all of these swing districts in the suburbs." He described the issue as a, quote, "ticking time bomb for Democrats." I'd say the bomb has already gone off. Since Biden entered the White House in January 2021, a historic stream of illegal immigrants has poured across the U.S. southern border. This has had catastrophic consequences for many swamped communities in Texas and Arizona especially. They've shouldered the burden of the border crisis for years, so it's a little rich for New York to be throwing a pity party. It obviously would be better if the federal government was doing its job in enforcing our laws, but until that time, there's little border states can do to fix the situation. All they can do is mitigate the damage. The Biden administration has done all it can to make sure that the border remains nice and open, or, in quotations, secure. The administration's actions have made it clear that Biden and his top officials want to flood the country with illegal immigrants. Here's a tweet of Greg Price. This is completely insane. Biden's DOJ is suing Elon Musk's SpaceX because they only hired American citizens instead of refugees and asylum seekers, and wants to force them to give full back pay to non-citizens that they choose not to hire. This is insane, folks. They are suing a private company because they won't hire asylum seekers? This is crazy. So the Department of Justice sues SpaceX. So the Justice Department sues SpaceX for discriminating against asylees and refugees in hiring. Do these people not, do they not get it? This is by far the worst administration we've ever seen. The Democrat Party is the most destructive political force that we've ever seen. Hands down. Because it has been completely radicalized. This is why I left the Democrat Party, and apparently I left it just in time. I seen this coming. I seen this party heading towards the cliff, and I wanted nothing to do with it. Nothing. As soon as they started talking about they wanted open borders, as soon as they started talking about dreamers and how we need to just let everybody in, as soon as they started talking about universal basic income and healthcare for all, while at the same time promoting open borders and letting illegal immigrants flow into our country, I said, no, this is insane. This is insane. I seen this happening to the Democrat Party a long time ago. And this is where the border state busing comes in. Instead of carrying the entire burden of the Biden-led border disaster, Republican governors such as Greg Abbott in Texas, Ron DeSantis in Florida, and Doug Ducey in Arizona decided to ship illegal immigrants to places such as Chicago, New York, and the District of Columbia, and most amusingly, Martha's Vineyard. You guys remember that? They did not even want 50 illegal immigrants for a 24-hour period. They were gone. They were gone. Tell me these people are not complete phonies. This is hardly ideal, but if the federal government is going to foist open borders onto the country, why not at least force the people who voted for this nonsense to pay more of the price for it? Of course, Democrats in those destinations pointed fingers at the Republican governors for their newfound troubles, and some left-wing political commentators tried to say that shipping illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard, a posh, liberal vacation destination, was akin to Nazism. I remember that. These people, the media is to blame for 99% of this as well. The Biden administration would not be getting away with what it's getting away with if not for a corrupt state Pravda media that we have right now. Biden's trusty allies in the legacy media have done all they can to, quote, contextualize the immigration issue to protect the president from criticism. However, much like with the crime surge, it's hard to pull the wool over the eyes of the American people forever when they literally see the consequences of bad policies in their neighborhoods. Thanks to Biden, the bill for once low-cost sanctuary city virtue signaling has come due. Yep. I suggest that if Democrat politicians want federal aid to care for illegal immigrants, they should demand that the White House work to restore the policies of the previous administration and actually attempt to get control of the border. The excuses have run out. The border crisis has become a national crisis, and blame for this mess falls on, quote, the big guy in the Oval Office. Democrats' demands for more money should be met with a resounding no until the actual problem is fixed at its source. Yep. Absolutely, man. This guy nails it. This guy gets it. Why do we have an administration that is not upholding its fundamental duty? Why is it not performing its fundamental task of securing our nation's border and protecting its people? This should lead to impeachment alone, but Joe Biden is going to get impeached because of his corruption. And you know what? Democrats deserve it. Democrats deserve Joe Biden. But the rest of us patriots and America-loving people do not. We don't deserve this type of treatment. And instead of just getting, a bad leader, but we can kind of live on and let bygones be bygones and just try and get it the next time, no. They want the beatings to continue until morale improves. They're throwing Republicans in prison. They're throwing activists in jail. They're sentencing people to 30 years for walking into the Capitol, their Capitol building, where a door was let open. A guy walks in, 5 minutes, walks out. He's spending 17 years. You got people serving 30 years that weren't even there. The Proud Boys. I don't even know what they did, but I don't think it deserves 30 years. People that commit murder don't get 30 years. And then these pro-life activists are looking at 11 years in prison, federal prison? No, folks, we have a corrupt justice system inside our nation's capital. The system has been corrupted. The judiciary system is broken. Broken. It has been captured by this fourth branch of government that's been created. This elite ruling class that created this club that we're not invited to, and Donald Trump is the biggest threat to it that they've ever seen. And this is why they're trying to throw him in prison with the rest of the people in his orbit. They're not trying to indict Donald Trump. They're indicting the whole damn movement. They are sending a message. If you want to go against the elite ruling class, you will go to prison. And I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but this is not a country that I want to live in. The founding fathers, the framers of this country, would be aghast. They would be disgusted. They would lower their heads in shame. With these people, no shame. They have no shame left. They forfeited all their shame when they tried impeaching Donald Trump for something we now know he had every right to do. Donald Trump got impeached for trying to rid the corruption in Ukraine that the Bidens were involved in. And yet he's the one that's being held accountable. He's the one that's facing prison time. He's the one that got indicted. But not Joe Biden, who is actually committing the corruption, who is actually overseeing the corruption, who leveraged $1 billion in taxpayer money to get a prosecutor fired that was investigating his son. We're living in an opposite world, where up is down and down is up, where the heroes are villains and the villains are heroes. Nothing makes sense. This is not the normalcy that they promised anybody. Joe Biden promised unity and gave us a damn banana republic, man. But listen to this, though. This is something interesting. So, everybody knows that the southern border is a disaster. Well, the Democrats have one person. They got one person that's actually talking about the problem on the southern border. One person that has a solution to the southern border, that has a solution to the immigration problem we have in this country. And they're trying to remove him. They're trying to keep him off the ballot so the American people can't even vote for him. And that person is RFK Jr. Here, check this out.
What would you do as president differently at the border?
I'm going to secure the border, and I'm going to do it by first of all, the physical barriers in the densely populated area, the motion detectors, the video, and the towers in the less populated. And we're going to close it down. And all of the law enforcement, local law enforcement, the ICE, the Border Patrol who we talked to, all said, yes, if we are given permission, we can close down these waves of immigrants. I worked with Cesar Chavez during the last 20 years of his life. My father was very, very close to him, one of his closest political ally. During the last 20 years, I worked on pesticide issues with him because he was concerned about exposures to Hispanic farm workers. The other issue he was particularly concerned with was closing down the border because he understood that these waves of illegal immigrants coming over were dampening the leverage that he had to bargain for legal farm workers in this country, and it was making their union organizing very, very difficult. And the people who are coming over here have no legal status, so they're taken advantage of by predatory and unscrupulous employers. It doesn't do good for anybody, and we need to shut it down.
Thank you so much, and thank you for showing compassion to the migrants in your documentary, regardless of everything else. Thank you.
He's polling at 31%, ladies and gentlemen. RFK Jr., a new poll that just released, 31%. He's rising in the polls, so clearly Democrats like this guy. I don't necessarily like his policies, but he wants to secure the southern border. This sounds like a typical Democrat. This is what Democrats were saying when I was a Democrat. To secure the southern border. This administration wants open borders. We've never heard of such a thing. Who benefits from this? And not once, not one time will you ever hear a Democrat say right now anything about why an open border is bad. All they say is that they're dreamers. Oh, they need the same chance everyone else gets. Yeah, that may be fine, but there's a right way to do it. They're completely destroying our immigration system, and there's no reason for it. Nobody benefits. Nobody. And I guarantee you, the same people that call these people dreamers, these asylum seekers dreamers, and they're just looking for a safe, better future, I guarantee none of them ask the type of damage that is being done because of these disastrous policies. I'm talking about women being raped, children being raped and murdered, dying on their way to the border, smuggled, sex trafficked, 85,000 children missing. Nobody knows where they're at. What a complete freaking disaster. And let's not even bring up the hundreds of thousands of American citizens that are dying because of the fentanyl and drugs pouring across the border. These people are insane. Insane. And I just pray to God. I pray to God the people that voted for these policies finally see the destruction that they cause and will start to vote a different way. Because sometimes you just got to hit rock bottom in order for you to pull yourself out. And I just hope we're here. I just hope we're there at that point. Because we can't take much more of this. We can't. This country can't take much more of this. But the one thing, some light at the end of the tunnel, is RFK Jr.'s poll numbers are at 31%. So that shows a little bit. And mind you, he's not going to be favored in these polls. So that just shows you that there is sanity in the Democrat Party. It's not much, but there's a little. So if anything, RFK Jr. should be that little light at the end of the tunnel, that even if a Democrat would just commit to just sane policies like securing a border, then this country can move forward in a much, much better place. Instead of the Republicans and Democrats in the mud fighting over closed borders or open borders. A police state or a free state. A democracy or tyranny. Like, dude, we should not be fighting for this type of government. We should not be fighting on this battlefield. Like, we should be in a much better place. People shouldn't have to sit there and tell their president that they want closed borders. The damn border should be closed and secured already. Like they used to be. This used to be a common theme of both parties. Once we get to a basic fundamental understanding of what is required to make a prosperous country, a free, prospering country, then we can move on to fixing things like term limits. Then we can fix things like term limits in the courts. We can start fixing things about spreading out the judiciary in Washington, D.C. There is no reason why the second highest court in the land needs to be concentrated in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., where all the matters get handled by this phalanx of judges, which are essentially activists in black robes. There's no freaking way. All that place needs to be dispersed. All those judges and courts need to be dispersed, and Mark Levin said it can be done by Congress. And in fact, it's one of Congress's main roles is to control the courts. So we'll see. But we can't get to that point until we get to a basic understanding that we cannot, we got to fix these basic fundamental issues like crime, like poverty, like secure borders, like the immigration. Like these things used to be fundamental understandings by everybody. But now it's only an understanding of one side, and 31% apparently of Democrats. The 31% going for RFK Jr. Look, I don't like the guy. I'm sure he's radical. He's got a lot of radical positions on a lot of stuff, but a lot of the stuff he says, Republicans and conservatives are like, yeah, this guy's great. No, he's still a Democrat, but he's just a sane Democrat. Like, it's like the Democrats now, they're not Democrats. They're radical leftists, Marxists. A bunch of tyrant totalitarians. When the Democrat Party turns into the party of censorship, then you know there is a problem. When you have a Democrat Party that is cheering and rooting and celebrating when they are locking up or trying to lock up their political opposition and a former president and leading candidate for the Republican Party, you have a problem. When you have people cheering for the arrests of Republican activists, pro-life activists, nonviolent, for possibly being sent to prison for 11 years, you have issues. This country has a moral issue. Half of this country is lost. It is lost. And it is because God has been removed from our society. I've been saying this from the very beginning. People that don't believe in God believe in anything. And these people have given up on God a long time ago. It's not just believing in God, it's why you believe in God. Understanding the why part is when you'll understand why having God and faith in a country matters. This is why our founders put God all throughout the Declaration of Independence. This is why the founders and framers refer to faith in God all throughout the founding documents. Because it is important to have faith and religion in a country. But when you have half of the country that loses faith, that don't believe in God, and then they start believing in climate change, and they start believing in government and Mother Earth, then we got issues. This is exactly what happens, is you have situations that are happening right now. A complete collapse of our civilization, of our constitutional republic. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't even going to make a show today, but all this stuff is really pissing me off. I'm scrolling through social media, and I just see one thing after another. Like, all this stuff builds up, and I'm just shocked. This Gibbs story where this guy, this J6er got sentenced to 17 years in prison, sobbing in the courtroom. I mean, my God, man, have these people no shame? And then on top of that, I see 5 pro-life activists getting arrested, sitting in prison right now, and are facing 11 years in prison with no violence? No violence, folks. It's not like they firebombed a police cruiser. No violence. Facing 11 years in prison. This administration is trying to send a message, and that's the exact type of stuff tyrants do. And I don't know about you, but our founders fought a revolutionary war against tyranny, so I don't know. We'll see where this leads us. But I'm sure if there's not a course change, if there's not a course correction immediately, I don't know what else to see other than civil war. I really don't. I really don't, man. And I don't like saying that because it's not. War is bad. It's disgusting. It's death. It's the worst possible thing that can happen to a country. Look at the last civil war. This one's not going to be anything like that. We're going to descend into a third world banana republic where you have little pockets of terrorist attacks and stuff. You're going to be chilling at a McDonald's and an embassy is going to get blown up down the street. It's not going to be like you see in the movies. It's going to look like the civil wars that are happening in Egypt and in countries over in the Middle East, where you're going to have functioning normal societies, but you're going to have acts of violence taking place, which are terrorist attacks. You're going to have a civil war, essentially, in the middle of a civilization. It's not going to be like what we see in the books, in the movies. So it's certainly not good. So we need to make a course correction fast. And let's just pray to God that enough people vote the right way in 2024 to where we could start making the course correction. Because we can't take much more of this. We certainly can't take another 4 years. Absolutely not. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. I wasn't even going to do a show, but I guess this stuff really pissed me off, so I wanted to talk about it. It worries me, and I just want people to understand. I'm going to try and put out as much content as possible. If you noticed, I've been putting one out every single day. I'm doing my best. It's not easy for me. It takes up a lot of my time away from my family and all that stuff, but I think this is most important. Most important. When I think about doing a show, I think about my kids and the country I'm going to be leaving for my kids. And I'm sorry, but I can't look my kids in the face if we end up in this tyrannical third world banana republic and say that I did nothing when America turned into a third world tyranny. I want to be able to sit by the fire, and if I'm asked, where was I when America either rose or fell, I want to say I was right here fighting and trying to warn the American people. And that's got to be all of our attitudes if we're going to change the course this country's going in. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave all these articles in my podcast description like always. Make sure you read. I'm going to leave a few of them that I didn't really get into. Make sure you read the one about the sniper that had the suicide bomber in his sights. That's going to be important. That's an important topic. You're going to be seeing that meeting coming up shortly. And I hope we get a chance to see the guy that made the call not to shoot. We'll see. So I'll leave those articles in my podcast description. Also, I appreciate you guys sharing the show with your friends and family. I could see it in the numbers. It is starting to, you guys are really doing a good job. Keep up the good work. It really helps beat the algorithm. You could find the show on Rumble. You could still find it on YouTube for now. As long as we stay on, we're going to keep giving them to YouTube and until they just take the show down. So, but they are getting put up on Rumble. I'm promoting the show on TikTok still, promoting the show a little bit more on Facebook and Instagram. So if it's easier for you to watch the show on Facebook, the shows are going to start being on Facebook. And yeah, so again, I really appreciate you guys sharing the show with your friends and family. Keep it up. We got to get the word out there. We got to inform our fellow citizens. I mean, inform people, make the best decisions. You guys know that. I say it all the time. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great weekend. Don't work too hard. Make sure you rest on Sundays, but also enjoy your weekend. That's what it's for. And get some R&R. But most of all, just enjoy your weekend. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, God bless you and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.